Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff giving a hand here, and I am traveling. And also, I have an individual that's halfway around the world from the USA, somewhat. We have Kirsty Carlyle, who is an engineering PhD in Scotland. And she has a big emphasis on the finger partial hand world. And we're going to hear from her about what got her interested in this. As far as I noticed, we met a month ago, a little over a couple months ago now in person, and I didn't notice any missing digits. I'm pretty sure she has 10 natural ones. So, with that, Kirsty, let's hear your story.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Yeah, so all the way from Scotland, my interest started not too long ago. I have to admit that I was one of those people who had never heard of partial hand prosthetics until I was already in the prosthetics world, which is why I really appreciate the advocacy work and education that you do, Jeff, and see why these conversations are so important. So my background was biomedical engineering, which is a very wide discipline. I was most interested in rehabilitation and prosthetics. My interest there stemmed from enjoying rehabilitation, seeing how engineering can help people become more mobile if they've had impairments, and understanding the impact that this side of engineering can have on people's lives. So I decided that my engineering degree basically showed me that prosthetics are so advanced that they are mind controlled and anyone can 3D print them in their backyard. I thought, cool, this is really cool technology. And I decided to go down the prosthetics research path. And it was not too long into prosthetics research that I found out that actually prosthetics are not mind controlled. The field isn't advancing at the rate as the media told me, and that nobody can 3D print all the prosthetics in their back garden. That is just not how it works. Um, so I came into it open-minded, but a bit naive and perhaps misled. The media had sold prosthetics to me as some people might see as this really cool high-tech bionic man. And the more I've found out about prosthetics, I'm seeing all the gaps in knowledge, the gaps in research, the limitations, and learning more about what the reality is for people who have prosthetics. Um, so yeah, I didn't know much about partial hand um, at all. And when I started my program, I'm in a PhD program that's at four different institutions in the UK. Most people are looking at lower limb, and the rest are looking at upper limb. And I seen this project on the list that was partial hand, and I thought, okay, I don't know anything about that. I want to research that because if I don't know, and if nobody else in this program is doing partial hand, there must be a massive gap in knowledge here. And this is something that I would like to tap into. I was more interested in upper limb over lower limb. Um, so yeah, my career in partial hand started as somebody who hadn't really heard about them, didn't really know what the devices on the market look like. And it's now something that I'm really passionate about. I've learned a lot about, and for the rest of my career, I don't see me leaving the partial hand world. I think I'm in the partial hand world now. Um, so yeah, I think that's why I see that we do need education across the board. If I started a research program in prosthetics having zero knowledge of partial hand, I think that's quite alarming. Um, and being the only person in the program who's looking at partial hand, despite the fact that people with partial hand congenital differences or limb loss make up such a large proportion of the people who use or need prosthetics, why aren't more people doing the research? Why are all these people researching other areas? So, yeah.
So it's interesting. So in my journey started a little over 7.5 years ago. And it was very interesting. So right now I am wearing a Point Designs, and I remember laying in the hospital bed, missing 60% of my hand, wondering what life was about.
Yeah.
And started Google searching, and there was next to nothing back
Yeah.
then. And even crazier yet, at the time I was in the hospital, Point Designs wasn't even a company.
Mhm.
And they became a company in January of 2017. And I got fitted in March of 2017. And I am one of the very first to get their stuff. And this last week, in talking with them and stuff, we realized that Point Designs and I have grown up together. I've seen their changes and stuff. And people that have had amputations for a period of time don't know about this stuff a lot of times, because there wasn't, again, 10 years ago, it wasn't around hardly at all. There was some mild stuff, and the insurance companies did not want to go to expense because mild is very expensive. And so they denied a lot of stuff and put it down as experimental and used all these excuses. But the last 5 years, it's amazing the technology that has come about in the finger partial hand world. And we need to talk more offline. I'd like to get numbers, because I can quote you numbers for US and stuff, which people don't realize. In the US, the finger partial hand world is approaching 95% of all
Yeah.
upper limb loss. And it's as much it's averaging 45,000 finger amputations a year, yet less than 5% get a prosthetic, which is just saddening, very much so. That's why I do so much advocacy. And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? What stuff do you know about your area, or maybe even around the world in those senses?
Yeah, so for me, when I first started my program, being an engineer, I hadn't met anyone who had partial hand limb difference. I hadn't met anyone in Scotland. And I went to the American Society of Hand Therapists conference in DC, October 2022, and visited New York after. And that was the first time I had seen a partial hand assessment. It was the first time I'd seen someone with partial hand limb difference. So I actually had to come to the States to see my first patient. um, and since then in Scotland, I've seen two people, And that wasn't through my program. That was just coincidental. One person I seen, I was working on a project with on the side of the PhD, told her what I did, and she lifted up her hand, and she was a congenital case with just a palm, no digits. And I said, "Oh, have you ever been spoken to by a prosthetist? Have you ever considered a prosthetic?" And she said she didn't know that prosthetics existed for her type of limb difference until a friend told her that they seen it on social media. Um, so there are people in Scotland I know who didn't know that prosthetics existed for them. In the UK, we have our National Health Service. So the setup is quite different to the US. And the National Health Service is in England recently introduced the myoelectric multi-grip hands for full arm differences. So hopefully partial hands will follow and we'll see more partial hands being prescribed by the National Health Service. But yeah, I didn't see anyone use any devices until I visited the States. Um, I also visited Cambodia for a research visit, part of my program. Again, mainly lower limbs. But I noticed in one of the clinics they had a price list up on the wall, and partial hand was there. And I said, "Do you have many partial hand cases come in?" And they said no. Um, and I think they were giving silicon devices. So yeah, I've seen different setups with our National Health Service. Um, and I had a survey out in October 2022, and most of the people who completed the survey were based in the States. They were clinicians, people who work with partial hands. The majority were from the States, but I also had people from Canada, Ghana, UAE, some different perspectives in there. But from what I've seen early on in my career, was that the setup in the States and the insurance and workers' comp and workman injuries seem to be where most of the prescription and most of the devices were at. Um, so yeah, hopefully in Scotland we'll see more devices soon. My supervisor has done a study on prescription rates and amputation rates in Scotland, which will be published soon. So hopefully I'll have some numbers too. Again, the numbers I use are based in the States as well. So
Yes, I'd love to see those numbers. And a thought, so I call us the lost kids here in the States because we are the largest slice of the upper pie, but then we, like you say, you haven't noticed it and stuff. And talking to individuals and stuff over the years, we hide it well too.
yeah,
And I don't know how things are out of the United States, but a lot of times the ladies take it a lot harder. They do their nails a lot, or
yeah,
if they do, and if they have an amputation of a finger and only have 9 or 8 or 7 nails to get done, it really is an emotional struggle for them. So again, they hide it a lot. And
yeah,
that's why I do what I do. But then also, what's very interesting on the mild side of things, which is um, the most accepted form, um, by insurance companies here in the States. The mile being eye digits and OSER come from the UK area. Most of their technology and building and stuff came from there,
Yeah.
which is very interesting in the fact, and I've talked to many amputees over there, and like you say, if it's not the work related accident, your home health care system doesn't support it at all.
Yeah. No, that the first point you made about the fingernails, I ran a study with people who prescribe partial hand devices. Um, and there was a participant who's done work in South Africa and someone who'd done work in Saudi Arabia, and UAE. So different sort of culture to the UK and the US. And one of those participants said that their clients, patients, would not tolerate anything like a body powered device, a myo device. It was purely silicon. And that was for cultural reasons. And as you said, ladies wanted their fingernails done. And so for places like that, um, body powered and Mayo is not the target audience. It's good to know that, like, I think what they did was they'd maybe suggest it, but know that the person wouldn't tolerate it and it wasn't an option. I think that's something that we don't think about too much because in some other cultures, people love the robotic look. There's a sort of shift. People are like, yeah, that reminds me of this movie, or that looks futuristic, or that looks high tech. Some people really want that. And then for other people, it's I have lost something and I want it to look like I've got it back. Um, so people's expectations and what they want um are really different.
Oh, 100% with that. We're all individuals. And I know with my closeness to Point Designs, um, products are different from the US to other parts of the world. And they have products that are in European nations and stuff that are more appearance driven products that
Yeah.
go over the standard that I wear, just because of that cultural changes and things like that. And on our end, being the amputees, it's a struggle because we do so much with our hands. And I remember early on how I felt that it was very gross, or my scars and stuff.
Hmm.
So early on, I wore stuff to protect other individuals from seeing what I thought was, you know, I was damaged goods or my hands was damaged goods and stuff like that. And I had a very dear friend that one day looked at it and said some things to me that really opened my eyes and gave me, now I wear it as a badge of honor. And I am very open, and I want everyone else to be comfortable within their own realm. So that's why I do what I do, to say, okay, this is where my comfort level is. Um, I will never say you need to step up or anything of that sort, because we're all individuals, but
Yeah.
I also want to give the individuals that are looking for their voice the strength to stand up and talk about it, because we need more open discussions to get better products and more products into the hands of every individual that needs them or wants them.
Yeah. Also, that really resonates with the focus group that I ran as well. A lot of the participants said if you can get your patient, client, whichever term you use, if you can get them to meet someone else who's got similar presentation, similar limb difference at some point, that is huge. It not only helps to set the expectations for the patient, but as you said, it gives them that empowerment. It gives them an understanding. And it's not possible in all cases. Like when I was in Cambodia, partial hand was listed, but they didn't see people. But again, with social media, you can reach out to people virtually. It's definitely something that people advocate for, and see the benefits. And I think that's something that came up at the conference that we were at. And something I would like to ask you, Jeff, actually, is I've learned that terminology can be quite controversial. Um, so I've had some clinicians, prosthetists say to me, I always tell the patient it's a tool, it's a tool, it's a tool. And then others have said, I don't call it a tool because then people don't embody it. People might not see it as something that they could wear every day and as an extension of themselves. I'm just wondering what you think about the term tool based on your
Okay.
experience.
Okay. I love that question because within my world, this right here is my fourth frame or socket, because yeah, there is a lot of different terminologies in the prosthetic world on the upper side. And this is 3D printed. My fingers are 3D printed also. And before, and I'll talk just on the point digits side, my frames or socket were fabricated, laminated, and they were thick and bulky.
Yeah.
And I would wear them for periods of time, but the fit wasn't always the best. And so I might wear it for a couple hours and then have to take it off for a period of time and stuff. And at that point in time, it felt like a tool to me.
Yeah.
Then last January, I got this new socket, and right from the get-go, it felt like it was made perfect for my hand. I call it, it fits like a tailored glove.
Yeah.
And over the last year, as I've used it more and more, it has changed from being that tool to an extension of my body. I put my prosthesis on average around 4:30 in the morning when I get out of the shower, and I'll wear it. Well, this week we're out late connecting at this conference and stuff, and there were times it was 1:32 in the morning,
Yeah.
and I had worn it all day long, not taking it off at all in that period of time.
Yeah.
And it, another aspect of it, and all of them did this for me. Anytime I put my prosthesis on, it lowered my anxiety level down because it gave me a feeling of being more whole or complete again.
So that's interesting that for you, it's changed over time because of how the devices, well, how your prosthesis has changed as well. It goes back to what you've said about you sort of the growth that you do, maybe perhaps alongside your prosthetist, alongside the development and the device changes. Um, so yeah, maybe that's something that for people who have they're new amputees, for them to understand that it might be a tool for you or it might be an extension of yourself. But something again that I've learned from a clinician was about setting goals, not just short term, but 5 year goals, 10 year goals, because the device that's best for you at that point in time might not be the best device, or it might change as well. Um, so no, I think that's interesting.
Yes, as time goes on, we get more comfortable with the product. So it gives us more ease in that sense. But then also, I am in a very active lifestyle, plus of physical work at my day job and stuff. So the point works very well for that. If I
Yeah,
was more in an office type setting and stuff, I might lean more to the myoelectric side of things. And um, back to this 3D printing and stuff, technology is so amazing. And there is a learning curve to all technology. But
yeah,
if you have a prosthetist CPO that is well versed in this 3D technology, it is amazing. And I advocate to go that route. So in my journey and stuff, I still work my day job, which is at a refining company. And part of my safety personal protective equipment is gloves. And I have to wear them whenever I'm out in the refinery.
yeah.
And it has always been a big burden because they wouldn't fit on my old frames and stuff. I always had to have my gloves modified, and it was a big challenge. I never had the same company do two groups of them in a row because it was such a challenge. They'd fight through it and then more or less tell me, oh, this was a bigger pain in the butt than what we want to
Yeah.
do. So, find someone else next time. But then I got this last January and I went to a store the next day and walked to the glove aisle and I pulled a pair of gloves off the shelf and literally I actually have the glove right here.
Yeah.
And I put it on and started crying in the store because that big challenge that had been a part of my life for 5 years was now gone.
Yeah.
I can go to the store and buy a pair of gloves now.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that comes along with education, not just educating people in the partial hand space, but the public, friends and family, colleagues and stuff like that. Something I learned, I had my grandmother was in a wheelchair from when I was very young, and my grandfather on the other side was blind. So I was always exposed to technologies to help people who needed extra support. we always called them disabled. They were disabled people. And then sort of at the start of my prosthetics career, we had a session on terms like disability, and they basically said you're only disabled by your environment, or you can sometimes be disabled by your environment. So your situation at the store is you might say, hey, I've been disabled because I need to get custom made gloves for my hand. You've now got a new hand. You were no longer disabled when you went to the store and you could go in and pick up gloves off the shelf. Um, so I think that's something that, if people sort of see the challenges that people with partial hand loss or use partial hand prosthetics see, then the attitude towards it being a disability might change, it might shift. I don't know, but people aren't aware and also might not be aware that saying to you, it's a bit of a challenge to make your gloves, the sort of impact that can have on someone, that could really set someone back.
Oh, totally. Um, kind of circling back to the reference to lost kids and stuff. Uh, we are so size oriented in a sense, the bigger, the better type things. And a statement I use frequently is most used, which your fingers, hands are the most used limb on your body,
Yeah.
yet it's the least recognized because of
Yeah.
size again. And people, oh, it's no big deal. It's only one or two or three fingers. You got seven of them. Don't worry about it. Just go live your life. But it is a much bigger deal. Recently, I was talking to an individual that several years ago lost four fingers on that individual's dominant hand. And the doctors did the surgery, closed things up. The individual went through some rehab and stuff, and they live in a rural area of the
Yeah.
United States, and they were sent home, and they had no clue again about partial hand prosthetics. And in talking to this individual, they told me when they go out to eat, they look at the menu and they choose an item from the menu as to by the fact that they can eat it or cut it with a fork and spoon because they only have one hand. They can't use a fork and knife together.
Yeah.
And, people don't realize how much those types of things affect people.
Yeah. I think for me as well, coming from the engineering background, being interested in the technology, I had no clinical experience before I started my program. So I've learned a lot about sort of psychosocial impacts, like you were saying earlier about comfort, scarring. Um, I've seen people speaking about how their hand is painful when it's cold. So again, that could be a different problem in different parts of the world. All these things that come with partial hand amputation or partial hand limb difference that as someone who started with interest in the technology, I've had a lot to learn. Um, and I think it's really important that everyone who's part of the partial hand workforce understands all of these sort of impacts or aspects that affect the end user. It's it's not just a product that helps you move. It can as you say, can be something that is part of your body image, can give you such independence and all these other things. It's not just a functional item, a product of engineering. It's a lot more than that, which I've learned. It's been enjoyable to learn, especially from people like you. And I feel that a lot of people are very willing to tell their story, and everyone's story is quite unique. Um, it's just getting those people onto the platforms to share them. Um, if you see the same people at conferences, you're going to hear the same stories. Um, so it's about expanding this network, and finding out more. And it'd be good to tap into the people who are perhaps in countries or areas that it's a different funding system, it's a different way of life, different cultural expectations, and hearing how it is for them.
Oh, 100% agreed on all of those aspects. That's why I do the advocacy work that I do. And I'll tell everyone out there, you're more than welcome to share my contact information to each and anybody that is in need or wants it and stuff, to build these bigger networks and connections around the world. Because yeah, there's different social lifestyle type aspects of it that need to be brought aware and can help bridge the amputee world. And also, I a lot of stuff and a suggestion as you do more of your work and stuff, things we need to start looking at more team aspects of multidisciplines and stuff, bringing everyone together, and more long range studies and things of that sort. Because, like, what I'm aware of is everything is more short term and stuff, like typical majority here of time with hand surgeons and PTs. You go for a period of time, maybe 6 months. And I think 6 months is probably on the long range of hand therapy and hand surgery connection. And then it becomes out of sight, out of mind. And, not, I want to say, I feel that in that realm, it's just gone off the radar, where people are assuming all is well, when in all actuality, all isn't well. Again, have been shifted or put off, and we're the lost kids again, so to speak, with a metaphor.
Yeah. Um, I spoke from two of the studies that I've done, the fact that it should be a multidisciplinary approach from sort of before surgery to I'm looking at the prescription process, and trying to create a process that could be standardized, that people who do less prescriptions can follow. Um, and then at that point of prescription, it's not like, I don't know, buying or acquiring a television where you go home, you've got your television, that's great. It's no, there's a period of training. And then once you get to that point in your training, what if years down the line, you're not working in a manual job anymore? You might be in an office job. So your needs are going to change at that point. So as you said, it's longitudinal. You don't just acquire a device and that's you. Your anatomy could change. your mental well-being, your funding situation could change if, for example, if it was someone in the UK and they they won the lottery or something and they got enough money to get perhaps a second device. So many things could happen after that point of prescription that people's needs and wants and what's available to them could change, as well as the training and rehabilitation aspect. Um, so I think part of that multidisciplinary team is also the physiotherapists. It could be mental health nurses have come up in conversation as well. Friends and family as well, part of that process. So it doesn't just end there. And I think that sometimes that can bring in the lost kids again.
Yes, again, 100% agree on those things. One of the probably most frequent statement that I hear when I'm doing peer support calls and talking to other amputees are they struggle with how to talk to their own family and friends about their struggles and challenges, which at that point in time creates bigger mental health challenges and stuff. So we need to open up and learn how to express ourselves, and I want to say in my journey, it has been very humbling at times where there are times that I've had to ask for help and stuff. And you got to swallow your pride and ego or whatever and be open to doing that. A couple of years ago, I always worked on my own vehicle. That's what I do at work, is work on equipment and stuff. And because of my challenge, I am very, very one side dominant now. And I was working on my vehicle one day, and one side, went very easily, but the other side was very challenged. And I put myself in some extreme conditions and stuff where I tore my rotator cuff on my good shoulder. And for a period of time, I was down to 2 fingers. And that really opened my eyes, humbled myself to the point that, hey, there are times you need to step back and ask for help. And you need to protect your good side, because the last thing you need is to make it incapacitated of some sort and make your life that much more difficult. And that leads to terminology and discussion with it, bringing that up at my workplace. They like using the terminology of restrictions. We want your doctor to tell us what you're restricted from doing and stuff. And I go, well, that really, in my eyes, isn't a good term. I have limitations. And a more open term in my eye is a limitation in capacity, ability, and stuff. And let's have more open discussions on that side, not just a black and white, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't.
Yeah, that's how I feel about all those years that I called my grandparents disabled, and I thought, no, one was limited in the fact that he had no vision. He still worked and he still looked after us. He wasn't not able to. and with my grandmother in a wheelchair. She wasn't able to walk, but she wasn't disabled from life. So I think, yeah, terminology is a big one. And I think also going back to the multidisciplinary side of it, making sure that everyone in that team is using the same language, um, and using the same terminology so that that's something that the patient themselves understands. Like at least you are headstrong enough to go, I don't have restrictions. Let's do it this way. But if that was somebody else, they might start to think, I have restrictions, and that negative language goes in, and that can be really tough.
Yes, very much so. I like to use the words adaptations and challenges. It is not so demeaning or
Yeah.
hard lined, and again, you know, everyone out there has challenges, just like the statement of I can or I can't. Those are very true statements, and whichever one you put out is what you will get also.
Yeah, no, definitely. Um, and I think that's something that is true for lots of different impairments as well. But particularly in partial hand. Um, yeah,
Well, thank you very much. And I am sure we are going to be talking, at least on the backside, a lot more
yes.
as things go. I think it will just help to spread the information around the world more, help everyone and stuff. Thank you for your time, Kirsty, and I wish you a very good evening, and we will be in touch.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I apologise it's went dark in Scotland now. It's not as bright as it was earlier. But no, it's a pleasure to be included in your series of videos. And as someone fairly new to the partial hand world, I appreciate all of your experiences and patience as well as I navigate and learn. Um, but yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to chat to you as always.
Yes, most welcome. And we will talk soon.
Thank you, Jeff.